Hey United Youth, how are we all going tonight? We miss you guys so much. Well, we're here for another Friday night, United live on Facebook, CPC Facebook page. We're so excited and happy that you guys are tuning in to another awesome night. Tonight we're doing something a bit different. We've got the youth pastor of Wallen Gateway Youth and also the North Regional, I guess, leader, as you call it, for Youth Alive, Faith Battistella, with us. So everyone make it
Hey
well.
guys.
We want to see the clapping on Facebook, that reaction, the likes. We want to
Woo!
see everything just going up, which is awesome. How you going,
So
Faith?
good. Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Had a good week.
Yeah, really well. Busy, but it's been good. So
That's
yeah, so happy to be here.
That's awesome. So Faith and I have been, I guess, working with each other for probably about a year now, since
Yeah.
last year, and she's been helping me a lot since taking over youth. And yeah, she's an awesome woman of God, and we're so honoured to have you, Faith. And it's awesome. It's so good. So thanks for
Oh,
coming on.
thanks. You're a legend. No, it's been awesome getting to know you. You're a champ.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So tonight I just thought we'll just go into some questions, and, going into obviously a time of COVID-19, it is a bit hard because we don't get to see you guys as much, and it is a stressful time. So I thought tonight we'll just get Faith on and, just bring a bit of light on youth and the importance of youth and how good youth was, being a teenager that was in youth to now leading youth. I thought it would be great to have Faith on. So I thought we'll just get right to it. So do you want to share a bit about yourself, Faith? And
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Um, yeah, so I'm 27 years old. I live in Wallen. I love Disney. For those who don't know, I'm a big Disney person. Like, I live and breathe Disney. I love coffee. I think instant coffee is from hell. It's not real coffee. I live off the eternal stuff,
yeah,
so coffee
amen.
is, it's not a heavenly day without coffee, let's face it.
Yes and
Um,
amen for that.
yeah, love spending time with friends and family. I love horse riding and going to the beach. Like, they're like my two favorite activities to do. Love doing it. Um, what else do I do? I am quite slow, and I'm happy to embrace that. I've got my faith moments, as I call them, which are just really blonde moments, but it makes people laugh, and that's just who I am, and that's totally okay. I've swallowed my earrings once instead of my medication, and I don't know if they're in me or out, but hey, gotta have a laugh and just embrace it.
That's great.
Um, so good. I've been a youth leader for 11 years in different roles, and I love my job. Get to act like a kid and get away with it. So yeah, I
So good,
love
isn't
doing
it?
what I do.
So
It's
good.
literally the best job in the world. So yeah, a
Amen.
bit about me.
So good. And yeah, that's great. I didn't know that you swallowed your earrings once, which is quite a shock to me. It's actually quite funny. I had to try to hold my laugh in,
Like,
but
yeah, I opened my hands and the medication was in. I was like, oh, that's what that croaky thing was like, or that scratchy thing, I
did
should
you did
say.
you get like any injuries, or did you, when you felt it go down, you're like, nah, that's not my tablets or anything like that?
I just thought maybe I swallowed it the wrong way or something. Like, it just, because I normally like choke back my meds when I used to be on medication. So it was just like, and then I opened my hands and I was like, ah. So, I might go for an x-ray one day and someone's like, what's that?
Or maybe even a metal detector if you're at an airport or something, eh? Like you would just, it
Yeah,
would
I've
just
thought
beep off.
about that. So,
So good. I thought, so a question. So being
mm,
a youth in COVID, how
yeah,
how how would you survive? So obviously putting your youth kid hat on, taking the youth pastor hat off, putting your youth kid
yeah,
cap on. How would you survive during COVID?
yeah. Hey, it's just such a different world. I don't, yeah. I think I've even struggled a little bit because I like live alone. So like, thankfully as a kid you've actually got family to really have their support you, to be able to like have a conversation with, play a few games and all that type of stuff. So I really think that family is a massive part of surviving through COVID-19 and really using them to draw strength from, encouragement and all that type of stuff. But obviously I think the massive thing is just holding on to your relationship with God. Like, I think that's the most, important thing as a teenager or anyone else of any other age, and just really allowing his word to be the anchor for your soul, and really being planted in his word and allowing that to fuel you and give you all the strength that you need. And, especially with COVID, it's temporary. It's a temporary situation. It might last a couple of months or however long it goes for, but God's word is eternal.
Amen.
Like, God's word is filling for your souls. And I think I've really had to make sure that I'm just personally really drilling into his word and like feeding myself with it. Like, his word, it gives you life. And so I think that's the most important thing we can be doing in this season. Looking after ourselves, still going out for walks, with social distancing in mind.
Just the elbows out. Just like that.
Yeah.
And just walk.
Totally. But and just eating well. Like, it's so easy just to stay in your pajamas all day and, just binge watch and all that kind of thing. But I think still having a routine, like get up, have your shower, get dressed, even though you're going to be at home all day, and still live this routine and live it connected with God. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the best thing we can do for this time. So yeah.
That's awesome. And we're so blessed that we've got technology nowadays, where we've got like things like House Party, where we've got Facebook Messenger where we can call each other, or we've got WhatsApp, and we've got Instagram, we've got all these things. So it feels like we're not actually missing out. Because
totally.
For myself, people that know me very well, I've got massive FOMO. I get huge amounts of FOMO, and COVID-19 has actually made me. I've been struggling a lot because I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people. And
I'm with you. I'm so yeah.
It's so hard, isn't it?
I feel like I don't know if you've seen Frozen, but like I find myself like being like Anna and being like in the paintings on my wall and being like, hang in there, Joe. But I'm like saying it to myself, like, hang in there, Faith, like talking, because it's just me in my house. I'm all alone, and I'm just like, who can I talk to? Who's on my wall?
Well, I haven't seen Frozen, but I'm sure some of the youth kids have. And if you have, please comment and say if Faith has done a good impression of, who was it, Faith?
Anna. Yeah.
I'm pretty
Princess
sure it was
Anna.
I'm pretty sure it was a good impression, which is always good. All right, so next question. So being in youth as a teenager and now youth pastor, what do you think is important for teenagers following their faith in Christ?
Yeah, good question. I think to make sure that your faith is owned. I think this message is important for anyone, but particularly for young people, because it's easy to build our faith on someone else's faith and experiences. It's easy to live from, conference to conference or camp to camp, but, our faith is a lifetime journey and it needs to be owned. It can't be borrowed, and, it can't be grounded or built on someone else's faith. And so, I think in the letter to the Philippians, Paul wrote, I'm just pulling it up on my screen, but therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. And, the Philippians, they obeyed the gospel message about Jesus. They were to continue living by faith in Jesus through the commands of God, whether Paul was with them or not.
Yeah.
And, living by faith should not only be done when, it's seen by some kind of spiritual leader or your youth pastor. And the same is true for us. And, I love how I think it's verse 12, and it says, work out your own salvation. We've got to own our faith. You can't borrow it. And, the Philippians, they weren't made holy by Paul. They were made holy by Christ when they responded to him for salvation. And, if our faith is authentic, then we should continue to work out our salvation and let it take effect in our own lives. And I really believe that faith is not dependent on a spiritual leader, but it is this relationship with Christ. And, especially in this time, we don't have church quite like we used to, and, you know, we can't connect, you know, in the ways that we did, and it's super different. And I think, you know, this time is going to be really important for us to understand and realize, you know, is our faith, has it been built on someone else's or even the church, or, you know, has our faith actually been owned, and is it being sustained because, you know, we're spending time with God every single day. And I think, you know, that's one of the most important lessons that I've learned, and what any young person can learn, to make sure that our faith is owned and it's our own.
Yeah, it's so good. That's awesome. You've actually left me no room to add on there, which is always good.
Oh, sorry. No, you add on. I'm sorry.
Nah, you've killed it. You've done well. That's what I want. That's awesome. So next question. So what was something what is something that you have never forgotten about being a youth kid? So we just put that youth kid on again.
If only I had a hat, like I could be taking it on and off. I've got two for you. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course it is.
Awesome. So I've got a funny thing as a youth kid. So back in the day, we used to do prank wars against girls and boys. And so we had our prank war night, and the girls were staying at the church office, because our church office was like a house. And the boys were staying at the youth pastor's house, who was a male. And so, like, late at night, the girls, we all got in our cars and we drove to the boys' house, and we had like a bunch of, it's gross, I know, but pads and tampons, and we put like tomato sauce on them. And then anywhere outside of the house where you'd have to put your hand on, we put like a pad with tomato sauce or like a tampon, and put them everywhere. And then like, we kind of hid behind the trees, and we had like hundreds of water balloons like ready to attack the boys, and we started making noises like so that they would come out, and they came out, and like we were throwing water balloons at them, and then they were ready and they came out with eggs. And so like we all ran in our car, and like I was in my leader's car, and she was reversing, and we had like this big guy leader in our youth ministry, and he's like, oh, I can stop a car, and like literally like tries to hold the car. I have no idea, like right where the driver's seat is kind of. But as she's reversing and he's trying to be all tough and stuff, she runs over his foot.
Oh, wow.
And literally breaks his foot. And so all the boys went to the hospital. There's like 30 of them at the hospital while he's broken his foot and getting a cast on. And we were like, yes, the girls had won, you know, the night's over, and, you know, that was all fun. And then we were sleeping, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and some of us were still awake, and we started hearing all of this noise, like from the back on the roof. And we're like, is that like a raccoon or something? Like, I don't know. Wait, raccoon's Australian, or is it possums?
I think it might be a possum. I'm not sure.
Possum.
Maybe tell us in the comments, is it a raccoon or is it a possum? We're not 100% sure, but you'll be able to tell us, guys. You guys are in school at the moment and know about raccoons, possums, the differences. Tell us in the comments. But we'll call it a raccoon.
Yeah, I've got no idea. Please inform me, because I'm not that smart with that stuff. But yeah, so there was all this noise, and then we the front door, there was a knock, and so we opened it, and there were police there, and we were like, oh, hi, like, you know, and I was a junior youth leader, so it was me and the youth pastor were talking. They're like, people are breaking into your house, and we're like, what? No. They're like, no, they're on the roof. We got a phone call. They're all in balaclavas. Can everyone stay in the room, and we're going to go get them?
Oh,
and we were
my
like,
goodness.
Oh my gosh. And so like the guy, the senior pastor's son was there, and he knew you could get into the laundry through the roof. And so all the boys had dressed up in black and put balaclavas on, and there was a robbery apparently the week before, and the neighbors saw, so they called the police straight away. And so like we didn't know it was them, so like the police have all got their guns out ready to attack and everything, and they go in, like they're like, one, if the door is here, then they've got like a policeman here and a policeman there ready, like with their guns, so like, you know, they're like hands up kind of thing. And the guy like kicks the door down. He's like, hands up. And the guy's like died. Like, no, we're like, Frankie, we're from the youth group. Like, we're a church. Like, it was so funny.
That's great.
So that was like literally the best youth night ever. Like, it was awesome. And the police had a good laugh. They're like, you know, guys, it's probably not the best thing to do. But like, they thought it was so funny. And yeah, it was a good laugh. The guys were like so scared. I'll never forget that night.
Yeah, it's safe to say they've never done that again.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But it's a story. Like yeah, it was a good memory.
It's
So
awesome.
yeah.
And the second story?
Yeah. So the second story, it was probably when I was 15 years old, and at the time I was a junior youth leader, and it was definitely safe to say that I was probably living two different lives. One of them being, the best super Christian, saying all the right things and, all that type of stuff. And, at church, hands up and all that kind of thing. But then I very much so had like this second life where, I was with my friends and I was partying all the time and doing things I really shouldn't have been. And I remember this one night I was at church and we had this guest speaker, and he was like, there's someone here, and you're living a double life. And like when a preacher speaks and you're like, oh my gosh, how do they know? Like it was that moment. But yeah, he was like, there's someone here, and you're living a double life and you're spending time with people you shouldn't be, and God wants you to come back to him fully because he's got more for you than the life you're living. And I remember like my neck being like a turtle and like shrinking down because I didn't want anyone noticing me. But God like absolutely wrecked me. And I rushed to the altar and I got prayed for, and I just fell on the floor, and God was just really ministering to my heart, and he said, Faith, I didn't send my son to die on the cross for 10% of you, but 100% of you.
So good.
And it just so convicted my heart, and I really encountered the love of God in that moment. I encountered God giving me everything, him giving me 100%. And, I gave my life to God completely in that moment and just said, my life is completely yours. Do what you will, and you've got 100% of me. And that's literally been, a big part of my mantra, or, the way that I live my life, that I'm making sure that in everything I'm doing, that I'm giving God 100% because he gave 100% for me. So,
That's so good,
yeah.
Faith. I love hearing stories like that. It really brings me up, and it just brings my shoulders back and just makes me so proud. That's so awesome to hear, and it brings me back to my first time all over again. And you never forget the first time you really encounter God. But I'll tell you what, it is the best, most. There's no other words to explain when you encounter God for that first time and realize that he's with you forever. It is so good. It is awesome.
Yeah. It just changes like the rest of your life. Like it just, and you live in that. Like it's not just something you know anymore, but it's something that you live and experience in every moment of every day.
Yeah, so true. All right, got another one for you. What was something, sorry, wrong one, hardest thing about being a teenager and a Christian?
I think living in a world that conflicts with everything you believe as a Christian. I think I was working it out before, but we spend roughly like 14,400 hours in school. Like from in high school, like that's a lot of hours. Like we spend so much time, and in school, and even if it's not, even if it's a Christian school, like sometimes that's still, really, really different, but it can be really hard to get, so it can be really easy to get swayed to do something that you normally wouldn't do. And, I always say that you become a product of the environment you spend most of your time in.
Yeah.
And, as a teenager, when you're in school and you're, and a school lives of the world, so to live in that consistently is so, so hard. And you're, faced with all these different questions, and people question you and your beliefs and all the rest of it. And so I think it's just super important to make sure that, out of school hours, we are being really intentional with our time with God, that we make sure that that time with God and church and youth is a priority. Like it's so important because it feeds our souls, it feeds our our relationship with God, and it prepares us to be able to go into the school for so many hours in a day and in a week, to be able to stand strong and firm in the faith, you know. And I remember as a kid, I used to walk to school, and then I would pretend that I was talking to someone on the phone, but I was really praying to God and just talking to him. And those were some of the best times, like literally just having a chill conversation with God on the phone, what are you doing today? Or, what's in, the day for me, and just praying about different prayers I had or circumstances or just different things. And I really felt like that was such a good way to start my day. Like I was starting my day in his presence, and taking that presence with me, and just being really aware of his presence. Like I think the more we spend time with God, the more aware we are of his presence. And so when you're going into a school ground, or even just hanging with your friends or going to a party or whatever it is, God is already with you regardless. But when you're constantly connected with him, you feel that extra strength that he gives you, because you're completely connected, rather than a little bit, or not so much from whatever you were doing before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's good. It reminds me of a song that Planet Shakers used to have. It was Planet Boom. My God is big.
I love that song. So strong and mighty. Yeah, such a good song.
It reminds me of that, because he is so big, he is so strong, he is so mighty. He's always for you. He's never against you,
Yeah.
And I hear a thing constantly from youth, like us youth in general, just saying, why doesn't God give me this, or why doesn't God allow this to happen? It's not because he doesn't give you what you want, but he gives you what you need.
Yeah.
And when you have what you need, you only realize it later that thing that you potentially wanted to happen could have destroyed you, could have hurt you so bad, it could have pulled you away from God. And it's so true that he never leaves you, and he never forsakes you. And it's so good that you went there, and I'm so happy you did, because it really just puts it in perspective, which was so good. All right.
And his perspective is so much bigger than ours. Like I think I heard one of my youth leaders say it in a devotional the other week. He was like, if you think of a ball, and that ball is all the the humanly obtained knowledge that a human can know. We're lucky if we can know, a smidget of, that knowledge that you could possibly know. Some people might say they know half of that knowledge or 3/4 of it, but, God knows all of that plus so much more. And so when he asks us to do something, or, changes something that we might think is the righter path, he's like, you're basing that on the knowledge that you just know, but what I know is the bigger picture. I know every single thing, and that's why I'm making this happen, because you can't see what's going to happen, it's 2 steps down the track or whatever it is. And so it's so important to trust him even when we don't understand.
So good. It's awesome. Last question, Faith, because before it starts getting late for these kids and they need to get to bed, even though it's Friday night, you might have to get to bed early, Don't know what you guys are doing tomorrow. Maybe some more homeschooling if you haven't done enough of it during the week. So last question, some advice for youth in general. I think, going through life as a teenager has changed a lot, and it's consistently changing, with cyberbullying happening, with bullying in general. I think it's showing its head more and more as the ages get older and older. And, I think some advice on teenagers and for teenagers and youth in general, what would be some advice you'd have?
Nick, there's so many things. I think one thing I would have to say is to believe in yourself and believe in the person that God says you are. The world can be so cruel and say so many things that are just not true. And God says that we are so much bigger than what the world says we are. And we've got so much purpose and promise in our lives compared to what the world can see or what they think they can see. I truly believe that, a young person can actually change the world. you know, and I say that so confidently, and sometimes like I'll say it to a young person, they'll be like, that's nice, you know, maybe, but like, I'm like, nah, man, like I totally believe it. Like I believe that, you know, it's going to take this generation owning their faith to see a generation saved. It's, you know, not me or a youth pastor, but it's you as the young people. Like you have been called to influence. You know, what you guys have to say is actually just so important. And you know, there's this thing that I like to say quite a lot, but you know, you may be the only Jesus that some people ever see.
Wow.
You know, so you don't know, you know, what your words and how they can impact someone just by you believing in who you are and what God says about you. And you know, God says to all of us, you know, hey, I choose you. And if you say yes to me, then I will use you to save the nations. I will use you to save your friends and your family. And, you know, in, you know, this moment, particularly even, you know, God, you know, is saying it doesn't matter where you have been or what you would, or what you've done. If you say yes, then I'll use you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think spending time with God is so important. And I love my time with God. Like it's the best time of my day. But, you know, anchoring ourselves in his word and being committed to church and the youth community, and God, you know, he will use you in a mighty way. Like he really will. And so, yeah, believe in yourself and believe what God says about you.
It's so good. So good. And so true. It's so relevant. Like, you know, it's funny. I always think back to God not calling the qualified, but he qualifies the called.
Yeah, I love
And
that. Yeah.
every single one of you are called to God's purpose, and he's got a massive calling on your life, but it's your choice to actually take it. You know, it's so good, and I can't wait to see what you guys actually do. It's going to be amazing to see when you guys get into that adult. Even now, you can be inviting your friends and, you know, taking that step of faith. The step of faith doesn't have to necessarily be you're going to change the world, but you can change the world around you. And, you know, you might, like you said, Faith, you might be the only Jesus that they encounter. So it's a representation, but it's a step of faith as well, which is so good.
Yeah, massively. And you just don't know, like that seed that you sow into that person's life, even if it's an encouragement or whatever it is, like that could be the fruit of salvation.
Yeah.
Like it just takes, you know, saying hello to someone down the street, or you know, a lady that I work with in the Shire Council kind of thing. Like she's we've built a good relationship. She's not faith-based or anything. And she's like told me that she's got cancer, and you know, I was like, could I pray for you? Like, is that okay? And she was like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. She goes, but I don't believe in God. I'm like, that's okay. Like, I just love to pray for you, and just, you know, praying for her in that moment. And she messaged me later and she's like, I don't know, it's so weird, but I just felt peace, like, you know, and I'm like, that was God, you know, he loves you. So you never know, like be brave and know that God says, you know, he'll use you, he'll move in and through you. And I just think that's the biggest honor that anyone can have.
It's so good. So good. I actually wanted to ask you, so you're help, I guess, leading a youth conference for the Northwest. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So we're running a youth and young adults conference in July, hopefully. We'll see how we go with all the stuff going on. But pretty much Stir Conference is just something that God's really put on my heart and a few different youth and young adult pastors across the Northwest region. And the image that we got was kind of like of a map, and you know, all these little flames started to light up across the Northwest region. And then with all of these flames that were starting to light, it actually lit the whole the whole map. And I guess a big part of Stir Conference is to equip and empower young people to actually be those flames, because, you know, again, it's not going to be me who changes the world, but it's going to be us coming together. And so, you know, we want to provide a conference where we can encounter God, but also empower you guys, empower, you know, all the youth and young adults with the tools to be able to do that in different ways, and working with different organizations that we can have access to. Because like, I so believe that it will be this generation, you guys, you United Youth, that is actually going to change the world. And it just takes you saying yes and you believing in yourself, because I so do. So,
That's so good.
yeah, we're super excited to see what God does as we open our hearts for him to do something in us.
That's awesome. It's gonna be a good, exciting time. We'll be sharing more dates once, I guess, we get more of an idea of this COVID-19, what's happening with this COVID-19. But we'll be sharing it on Instagram. We'll be promoting it at our youth, and we'll be getting there as well. So it'll be good. Faith,
I'm super excited.
It's going to be good. You are an amazing woman of God. You are so cool. We are so honored to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. You know, it's so good to see what you're doing in your youth, and so good to see what you're doing with Steer Conference. I'm excited to see where it goes, but I know with your heart and with your determination that God has given you, it's going to be so good, and you're going to see so many kids come to Jesus because of your determination and your faith taking that step out. It's so good to see. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Nick. You're amazing. Seriously, like, you're going places. I really love your heart. I love journeying with people with the same DNA. Like, you're just as passionate as I am. So I love doing life with you. It's good.
Awesome. Thank you, Faith. And United, thank you so much for tuning. This was awesome. Keep those comments coming. Just keep liking, keep sharing, keep doing what you do.
I love comments. I'll be watching later after my youth night's over.
Awesome. So maybe just keep that social distancing, an elbow, keep away. If you've got a blanket, get under it, get some sleep, and we'll see you guys next week for another edition of United Live. Thank you so much. Thank you, Faith.
See you guys. Thanks for having me.
Shout out to everyone, CPC, Melbourne, Philippines. Shout out to everyone. Mate, I don't know you. Shout out to you too. Shout out to your friends. Have an awesome night. God bless you guys, and we'll see you soon.